Howdy, and welcome to the Feed Bandit Podcast, where we talk all things hunting and introduce you to the most innovative hunting gear and services. Here are your hosts, Jimmy Byrne and Richard Kinchlow. Hey folks, Jimmy here. Before we jump in, I just wanted to apologize for some of the sound quality in this episode. I was recording it from a horrible Wi-Fi in a hotel in Atlanta. I think the gist of it's there, and it's really interesting. So enjoy. Howdy, folks. Welcome back to the Feed Bandit Podcast. Jimmy and Richard here, and we're excited to join you again on another exciting episode. We're all fired up that we're into deer season now, and we're excited to get back into some things that we think will help you guys out in the field and will help us. Following along in the kind of the theme of last week, where we talked about dove. I was going to say dove. Jeez.
Oh, let's do it. I'd love to talk about them stupid gray rats. Love to.
Well, maybe when they come back in December or whatever. Where last week we talked about doe and just trying to refresh our memories. We want to do that again this week on a little more deer refreshers. So, how you doing right now? You excited to do this?
Yeah, I am ready. Anytime awesome. We're talking about hunting is it's good. Okay. Good stuff.
All right. Well, this one it comes from an interesting article that we found on the website Deer and Deer Hunting. It's a pretty good one. If some of y'all hadn't heard of it, they have some good stuff out there. But we thought this one can kind of encapsulate some of the ideas that have been floating around for a long time about what are doe doing at certain times and whatnot. And so it's just really kind of 7 main points that we kind of want to run through and give our side commentary on what this is about. And it's based on a guy who has been studying deer behavior, he says, almost on a daily basis for almost 40 years, but as a hunter, but as a photographer, all sorts of pictures of deer. So naturally, he watches them, and so he's able to see what goes on with them and whatnot. And and one of the first thing that he mentions here is about getting a good idea where you are about how the weather affects deer behavior. It says it's one of the most kind of important things to have on top of your mind when you're out there hunting deer. And one of the big things that he was, and this guy's name is, a lot of people out there may have heard of him. It's Charles Alzheimer, I believe how you pronounce his name.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the pioneer of the notion that the barometric pressure is like the number one weather factor that dictates when deer will or won't move. His thought is that whitetails, they can detect when that pressure, the barometric pressure, is rising or falling. Right. And that whitetails typically move a lot more when the barometer is moving, either up or down.
Right.
He says there's really from his observation is that, and with few exceptions, there's little or no deer movement once a front arrives and the weather becomes really nasty. Uh-huh. But he says that when the storm ends and say the barometer rises, that's when the deer are their activity increases dramatically.
Right.
Which is very interesting, and they actually give a measurement in here so that you can kind of take back and look on your weather app or whatever for the weekend. Say what they're predicting is that anywhere between kind of 29.8 and 30.29 inches.
Yeah.
Is the greatest time of whitetail feeding, as an example.
Right.
So I thought that was pretty interesting. The whole barometric, the barometer, and before a front comes in and it lowers or rises, and then after it goes back up or whatnot. That's it makes sense, I guess. And everything, but just something to keep in mind, for the folks.
Well, yeah, I think I think it just kind of makes sense that the deer would be equipped with such a sense. Because obviously, well, first and foremost, I think it makes sense because they can't use an iPhone, and you can check the iPhone for weather. They have no freaking clue, so they've got to have that built-in sense. They can't text either, which I know people are going to find hard to believe, but So yeah, that definitely doesn't surprise me. You got to think about it, especially a lot of the deer up north. If you know how they can get these random snowstorms. Like what was that one we were talking to? I think we
Oh
were
yeah,
talking
the
the
what do they
50,
call it?
the
Arctic
50,
fruit?
yeah, the Arctic blizzard that was like 50
Yeah,
below. Obviously with
with the
with that,
double time.
yeah, double time, yeah. When that was coming in, I'm sure that the deer were alerted, via the barometer and said, "Listen, you got to start preparing." So I think it's a natural thing. It's very similar to the ducks, those stupid sky rats. When they sense that the weather's changing again, probably the barometer, they're out of there. They're gone. They're headed south. So it's really it's a cool feature that nature has provided to the critters.
Bring a little science into hunting.
Oh
Need a
yeah,
little
for
more of
sure.
that.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
the second one was interesting. Is how bucks use scrapes. So his observations around this is kind of interesting, and it ought to help you kind of figure out where maybe an ideal spot to sit is. And some of them aren't necessarily like obvious.
Right.
As an example, he has uh, really four different types of scrapes in his observation. That's boundary scrapes, random scrapes, primary scrapes. And what's interesting about each one, so the boundary scrape, he says, are really they're made by bucks that are really just traveling through their territory. Oh, and mainly they show up along the edges of fields or old roadways,
Yeah.
and they're typically always made at night.
Hmm.
So, in his opinion, he kind of, or his experience, it's okay to kind of not pay as much attention to those because it may not be probably a buck that you're going to either see again or one that if it primarily happens at night, maybe they're traveling that spot at night, so it'll be harder for you. You won't kill it then, obviously.
Yeah. Right.
So he says to kind of focus on, obviously, you want to focus on scrapes, but you want to be aware of the second type, which is scrapes. And those are ones that you want to kind of try to identify that are really made just spontaneously as a buck
Right.
cruises around his entire territory.
Yeah.
So he'll make a random scrape as an example when he comes upon an area like a licking branch or it is somehow moved away by someone else or some other reason or whatnot, but they're not necessarily like what's considered by a buck to be like a permanent area that they travel, as an example.
Right.
So setting up there may not be as beneficial to you. So really, you want to find the primary scrapes, what he calls the mother lode of whitetail
Hmm.
scrapes, and they're normally found really around like strategic locations or inside corners or ridge lines or well-worn trails, which makes sense. I mean, that's what we all kind of think of, right? You
Yeah.
find a good trail and look for that scrape. More than likely, it's a primary scrape, and it could be between bedding and feeding areas, especially during the rut. So
Right.
you can get a good idea looking at maybe that path. You find that scrape that's a primary scrape. You could set around there because maybe you're between the feeding and the bedding area, so you'll catch it on the move.
Right.
So uh, and a lot of times to help you identify that, he says, look for scrapes that are about 20 or at the most 50 yards apart from each other along that
Hmm.
line. And then or you have a great idea that you're in that pathway. So that's
Right.
probably a honeypot area, if you
Right.
will, for
Yeah.
bucks. So that's interesting.
No, it really is, and I've really never dove into the science behind them. But the only problem that I've kind of thought about when it comes to scrapes is if that buck's got a 3 mile square mile territory, what are the chances of you being there when he's there? So what can you do to combat that? I think that's where your game cameras come in. Of course, you run the risk of putting your scent everywhere if you're in
That's
there.
true.
Something that I have done, and truthfully, I've not done very much, but I've seen it is very entertaining. Is during the rut, instead of using, making a mock scrape or something of that nature. One thing I like to do, and especially when they're in the rut, is get some of that doe and rut lure, and I'm not partial to any particular brand, okay, but get some of that and put it on a little wick and throw it out there in front of your setup. And really, when that wind starts to spread or starts to blow, it's going to blow that scent all over the place. And I found that to be effective just to bring in bucks that are out there hunting. I know a lot of guys that like to sit all day during the rut, especially when the weather's good and cold. That's been really effective. You can have a whole bunch of deer just kind of come out of nowhere because of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
for sure. That's interesting stuff. Where you can combine a lot of these strategies with just some
big time.
Anecdotal and observed evidence. And everything. It's everything you can do to help you out, right?
Oh, for sure.
Hey, hold on 1 second. Hey, folks, do you want to level up your hunting game and gear? If so, join the hunt to get killer hunting tips and tricks that'll help you out in the field. Text the word BANDIT to 345-345 right now. And when you do, you'll even get access to some exclusive deals on the hunting gear and services we discuss right here on this podcast. Again, text the word BANDIT to 345-345 right now and join the hunt.
So the third thing he talks about is knowing how to speak the language. So the language of bucks and deer. And there you go.
There you go.
He says it wasn't really until he began using a grunt tube alone or in conjunction with antlers that his success luring deer was drastically increased. So interesting enough, he found that for every buck he rattled in, he would get almost like 1 or 20 more respond to grunting, bleating, or wheezing.
Right.
So it was like it drastically amplified his success of calling in bucks. So if you're only using antlers out there, be sure to get that that grunt tube and learn how to do the different calls. And he talks about a lot of these calls in this article. Of course, I'll link to this article in the show notes page. But he talks about the bleat. Or a fawn bleat, basic grunting, trailing grunt, trending grunt, the wheeze. Just basically suggests, when you in order to do that, to really look up, sources to emulate and practice it. We kind of talked about, practicing. We had on one of our podcasts of when I guess back during turkey season, and we talked about how we practiced. Ahead of season, the turkey call, like just sitting in your house, to get back into the groove of things.
Oh yeah.
Similar here, it's like find some good YouTube videos or something, and just start practicing those things to where you're ready to go when you get out into your stand or your blind.
Right, so. Right. Yeah, I carry a grunt tube with me, but I always end up using it. And my daughter's like, I want to use it, I'm like, not now, damn it, And it ends up just becoming a lot more trouble than it's worth. Or I used to have it's called like a fawn in a can, so it was one of those type things, So I remember
like you turn it over.
Yes. So I remember, this is back when I was a little bit younger. I really wouldn't. I was scared of lie. I remember walking up to the blind late at night or early in the morning. And then I'd get into the blind. I'm kind of creeped. I'm not creeped out, but my senses are just on freaking edge. That a mountain lion's going to pounce on me. And I remember getting in there and putting my rifle in the blind and just kind of putting my pack in there so I can get the door shut. Well, the second that pack hits the ground, it inevitably turns over and I hear oh my God! Scares me to death. Oh God! So
that is hilarious.
Yeah, I basically end up screaming like a little girl, and so obviously that little fawn call is now in my hunting locker. Actually, you know what? I think it's gone to the abyss where my daughters take all their other stuff I give them. Right. So like, I want a baby deer call. So yeah, but as far as calls that that I've used with any amount of success is really the rattling the antlers. I've used those, and that's something really fun to do, especially with the kids. In the heart of the rut, if you've got some time, get out there and find a good spot and, clash those antlers together or find a, they make rattling bags now. They've come a long way. You don't necessarily have to do antlers. One tip, however, is, you need to use newer antlers. Okay, preferably ones that you just found that are still good and good and new and have that really good sound. Older
Not
antlers,
hollowed out and dried off
exactly,
and white.
exactly. The other thing is, go ahead and cut the brow tine off, and you'll thank me for that because those brow tines really hurt with your fingers when you smash them together. So, yeah,
Right.
yeah. But calling is something I'd like to get more into.
Hmm.
I think it'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. The next one he talks about, and something we talk about, off and on the podcast, is just the benefits of quality deer management on your property.
Oh yeah.
And without getting maybe too far deep into that, obviously he's referring to making sure you understand your property. What food is out there that deer want, maybe planting food plot, all those type of things.
Right.
One of the main points I wanted to pull out of here is, there's probably a lot of people listening that might doubt, that they have enough land to do it,
Right.
as an example, perhaps, or whatnot. And he says that, I'll just quote him here, which is interesting to me, is that for some strange reason, most hunter landowners think they have to put together 1,000+ acres to have any kind of quality deer management program, but that's just not so. He said they did it on essentially 160 acres, but even you can do it on even less than that,
Sure.
and their results were incredible. So,
Yeah.
I just wanted to point that one out, to people that you don't have to have a whole boatload of land in order to do it. And kind of what we've talked about is, you want to make sure whatever you have, you want to make sure that your deer population doesn't exceed that property. What's the carrying capacity? You want to make sure your buck to doe ratio is adequate. You want to check into the ages of your bucks. Make sure they're where you need to be, and make sure your habitat is where it needs to be, and it just leads to better hunting. Just better opportunities, and an understanding of your land. Your land. Your understanding of your land is so much deeper after being out there in the field and walking through the trees and looking for browse and whatnot. What do you have? You'll feel better about your land too and what you're providing the deer. So it's just
for sure.
Whether you have 10 acres or 10,000.
Yeah, for sure. And something also to consider is working if you don't own the property, working with your landowner. Trying not to have cattle everywhere. At certain times, things of that nature. And then if you're on smaller piece of land, seeing if there's other hunters on adjacent property that maybe can have the same mind frame as you.
Yeah.
That really, you may be on 160 acres, but if you got two other lease partners or two other leases next to you that are like-minded management, well, you just took your 100 acres and it's 800. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, for sure. The next point is kind of an extension of this, and just a couple of high-level things to remember in your management program if you're planning a food plot.
Yep.
And what he said was a really big important thing was, you gotta. It all comes down to the soil you have. You gotta have the right soil so you have a proper food plot.
Yep.
And a big part of that is making sure your pH is as good as possible in your soil. And this kind of getting into the weeds, but I thought it was interesting so people could go out there immediately after hearing this and test their soil, and just see, what is it, because they say a neutral pH about 7, may not be possible, but it's desirable. If you get between 6 and 7, then you'll be able to grow amazing food plots. So if you're out there and you're like, oh man, maybe we don't have anything to eat out here, blah, blah, blah. But if you have good soil, you might be an awesome candidate to have a great food plot out there. So it's something to think about, for people.
Oh, for sure.
So
yeah, for sure. And again, for those of you that are on smaller property or even large property, see if you can get your landowner to maybe help. I mean, if you think about it, if you buy the seed and help with some diesel, you could put something in, and then after the season, the landowner can turn his cattle on there or sheep on there, whatever it may be. Work with your landowner to try to make that kind of stuff happen. Also as far as the soil test is concerned, most county extensions, um, they can basically, I think they can test your soil, to say, okay, you need more lime or you need more this or that. So, take advantage of these county, these extension services that you've really got all over the country.
Great point.
I know.
That's why we have you on the podcast.
Yeah.
Or that's why you host.
Yeah.
Hey, hold on one quick moment. Hey folks, have you ever wished that there was an easier way to find the hunting feeds, supplies, and services you need, when and where you need them? If so, check out our hunter search at feedbandit.com, where you can see what hunting suppliers are in your area or are on the way to your land. Don't waste any more precious time searching Google or calling around for feed, blinds, feeders, or even outfitters. Just use our targeted search for hunters, the Feed Bandit Hunter Search, over at feedbandit.com. We'll find your feed.
So the next one is, really just kind of remember, what's realistic. And I think this one kind of applies a lot. Well, I mean, it applies to all hunters, of course, but especially I think when you're bringing on younger hunters and newer hunters into deer hunting. And it's really kind of understanding, what is a realistic buck to shoot? Because we're inundated, I know, we're inundated through all these hunting websites and shows and everything to see like these gigantic 200 plus.
Right.
And really got to come back to understand to harvest on my property. And
right.
He makes the point in this article that, truly 140 class whitetail buck should be a trophy anywhere, right?
No
You should be happy with that. And also that, anything greater than is rare, really. Few and far between under, normal, land conditions. I mean, obviously it's different if you're in some, bigger type thing or not, or, that type of thing. But most 99% of natural conditions. If you're lucky enough to shoot 140 class deer, then make yourself a trophy to go above, your mantle or whatnot. And
I totally agree.
Yeah, but it's something to think about. If you're not seeing the gigantic ones that you see on the TV shows, but you're seeing, man, that's 140 or even a little less than that. I mean, my God, be happy with what you have. Doesn't mean you can't keep trying to improve your land and whatnot to grow them bigger, of course. But don't be down to yourself or your property or whatever if you're not seeing bigger than that. You know what I mean? That's kind of the point of that point.
Yeah, no, for sure. In fact, I think that everybody should celebrate more when you harvest a good old mature buck, whether he's 140, 120, or if it's an old doe. I totally agree. People, it's gotten really materialistic looking at all the deer and, look, I killed Dr. Droopy Horn, who's 500 BNC, and I'll tell you, I get the obsession with the antlers, man. I think it's not for me, but I can understand it. But that's one of the things that's kind of hurting the hunting industry is to go, you're just out there trophy hunting, where you just throw the meat away, No.
Right. Yeah, right.
But no, I totally agree. When you're raising your hunters, kind of like what I've done, you raise them that there's so much more important than the antlers. I mean, antlers are really cool, but it's ultimately the meat, it's the spirit of the hunt, and all other factors are more important than the Boone and Crockett score.
Right, and they'll key off of us as we're hunting and harvesting animals. So, like, as an example, I can't guarantee, but I'm guessing that the first time I kill, or the first 5 times, example, I kill more coals, which is what I like to kill, or whatever. With my son Jeb, when he's sitting with me, and he sees how excited I am that I'm getting one of those, and that thing's not a perfect 150 class 8 point or 10 point, whatever, but if he sees how excited I am, how cool it is to me, he'll key off that and be like, yo, okay, it's okay to take a coal or whatever. I get just as excited nice doe, it'd be like, okay, it's okay to get those things, and it'd be nice to get others as well. But I'm not showing that I'm down on the fact. You know what I mean? So.
Oh yeah, totally agree.
The last thing on that we'll kind of end this article discussing it is just about understanding how the moon influences the rut. This is very interesting. We gather data to try to figure out, is there a pattern here based on when the rut started or the moon cycle. They call it, and essentially this is the changes in the lunar illumination to a whitetail's reproductive cycle. And their hypothesis is that sunlight and moonlight, they provide environmental cues that essentially trigger or synchronize the breeding among whitetails. So that's interesting. And basically what they say is, what they found is, it seems like, or it appears that there are basically like 3 ruts. So you have basically 3 types of ruts. Or you have a synchronized rut, a classic rut, and what's called a trickle rut. And what they found, before going into exactly what those are, or going into what those are, they see that basically, if you see a full moon around the same, when you see a full moon on the same time as a peak in basically those estrogen levels and the buck's testosterone levels,
right,
then that'll be like the best time of rutting. So what's interesting is, as an example, when everything kind of happens, say around November 1st as an example, then that's why things explode or appears to explode. If the rut goes or whatever, if there's a full moon there, it tends to portend that that's what's going to happen.
Right.
That would be what would be called a synchronized rut, as an example, when both those hormones are at the highest level in the full moon. The next one, being more of a classic, is the synchronized rut is more of like a how often does a eclipse, that type of thing. I guess it doesn't happen every year or whatnot. But what's more often is classic. You're in the neighborhood of, say, November 6th to the 13th. Typically, that portends that you'll have a mid-November rut, which will still be great. So, what was interesting is I was looking at it, and we had a full moon here on, I think, the 13th or 14th of October.
Right.
So if it happens about every 20 days or so, then we can kind of extrapolate the next full moon, will be actually in that time frame. So this year may be the classic rut time frame, as an example, which tends to mean it'll be great. Right. Hunting will be great during that period of time. And then you have the third, which they call the trickle rut. It's basically you have a full moon a little later on, so 16th, 17th, 18th, and then another full moon that happens about 30 days later, 16th, 17th November. And what that kind of means is that some of those does they'll cue off the October full moon. A lot of them will, while some others might cue off November. So you kind of maybe a split in the doe population there. Their activity kind of cueing off that way. So that might mean that you'll have a pop in late October in the rut itself, and then another one in Thanksgiving week. So it's kind of like that idea of the divided rut in a way. They think it's cued off that full moon night being in those time frames. That kind of idea.
That's perfect. I'll be in Chicago. That works out great.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. But I thought that's pretty interesting how the timing of that full moon, and basically they're saying it could be even a matter of 3 to 4 day difference.
Right.
Can be the difference between a synchronization or having a fantastic classical rut or a kind of divided rut during the year. So another thing to kind of look at, in addition to barometers and all that stuff, also look at the moon cycle and when the full moon's going to happen to get maybe an idea of when the best weekend to hunt, because that might be when the best rut is. So,
well, I mean,
they say it can basically drop off, within a day once it ends. So it's kind of it may not be right on, but it kind of gives you an idea of factors to look out for,
Yeah,
as far as that
totally.
goes.
Well, truthfully, just hunt all the time. If you
Well,
hunt every single
like-
weekend, every single day, you can't screw up. So
Right. There's your cure. There's your cure from Dr. Spitz right there.
That's right.
Dr. Corn Bandit.
that's right.
But anyway, that was the article. I thought that was interesting. Some other
That's
kind
great.
of scientific things to think about to bring into your, your hunting bag, if you will, so
Yeah.
to speak. But yeah, I got on that.
It's good stuff. Yeah, let us know what everybody thinks about that. I'd love to.
Yeah. Because if anyone out there is actually using some of those techniques, and how does it actually work for you? We'd love to hear about it.
Totally.
Trying it. Howdy at feedbandit.com. That's all I got.
Yes, sir. That's about it for me too. It was a good one. I like these articles. They're fun.
Yeah, they are. We'll try to find maybe a controversial one we disagree with it
Yeah, we can
next
do
time. So,
that. Nice.
But yeah, all right, cool. Well, folks, hope you enjoyed that one. Hope the deer hunting is doing great for you so far. Let us know. Please shoot us some pics of your harvest. You can send it to our Instagram at FeedBandit. So that'd be kind of cool. But with that, y'all go out there and continue having a good hunt.
Thanks for listening to the Feed Bandit podcast. Just a reminder to text the word bandit to 345-345. And when you do, you'll join our email list where we'll send killer deals on innovative hunting products and services, along with entertaining tips and tricks straight to your inbox. You don't want to miss out, so again, text the word bandit to 345-345, and we look forward to seeing you on the hunt. Until next time, have a good one, and remember to support your local feed store.